When I was little, I would stay up late watching the digital clock. Super exciting. But I would stay up late looking for patterns. Like this time right here, 12:34. What do you see? Do you see 1, 2, 3, 4? Or do you see something different? So I'm an artist, and I believe that creativity enables us to see what is not readily visible. And this is just as important in understanding 1 + 2 as it is in placing a brushstroke. And in the war between left and right brain thinking, it's easy to forget about an important thing called connection, which can make our thinking whole. And to give you a sense of my work, I create woodcuts, and these are basically just giant stamps that I carve out with a chisel and then I print. And I love this process because it's in its simplicity that it can teach us some complex things, like how art is a mirror for society. And this art form captures how oftentimes, in order to get what we want, we have to create its opposite. It's also the first social media, the social media that predated electricity. Printing revolutionized education. It democratized literacy. It's a technology that was invented to set us free. And, well, as we know, that depends on how we choose to use technology. But perhaps my favorite lesson from woodcut is how, in order to create something new, we often have to know what to cut out. And this can shift our thinking and how we look at consumerism. Each of us is responsible for creating what we consume. So some years ago, I started working in manufacturing, and it's the classic story of man versus machine. You know, we fight for these day jobs that we don't even like. And I was hired to automate our processes to replace the human hand with a systemic one. And very quickly, I realized that even though I was just supposed to document things as is, there was a lot of stuff that we were just replacing with technology that we didn't even need to do. And so, for example, we were drowning in paperwork that created an environment of blame and distrust. And while my boss may have been a former Navy SEAL who drew battleships on the whiteboards, this wasn't a war zone. But oftentimes the office can seem like that, and so I just started collecting data. And I was looking for ways to reduce cost and to simplify things. And it was hard to get any of these changes through. But even so, I was determined to find the underlying story that connected each of the links of our supply chain. And what I ended up finding was that 30% of our errors in customer service and sales all tied to one process that we were trying to automate, and that was 85% of my time, 85% of my workday. And that was the root of our firefighting, our backlog, our blame. And so I went on this mission to eliminate my job. At this point, I was pretty fed up, and I decided if they fire me for saving them time and money, to hell with it, I'm gone. And so I sent a company-wide email enforcing these changes, and in retrospect, it was kind of shitty timing. I did this the same week that my boss quit, and I was now reporting to another manager who was inheriting me as a report with an onslaught of angry emails about how I was doing things outside of my pay grade. And that week just sucked. But I wouldn't do it any differently. Because one thing that time will teach us is that the things that make us uncomfortable aren't necessarily bad. And in time, people came to like the changes and work together towards bigger and shared goals. And so at this point, I went to my manager and I said, as you know, I'm about to have a lot of free time. And I can be busy all day, but I'd much rather be productive. And it was on me to show that I was willing to work towards the greater good of the company. But the great thing that he did was he gave me opportunities to learn and then teach others to lead themselves. And that's something worth emphasizing because, again, whether they fired or promoted me, either would have been a good thing, and that's easy to forget. And some people will say that this approach takes a lot of balls. And while I may have big wood, I can assure you that it doesn't take balls. What it does take is a willingness to believe. in the things that we cannot see. And so I leave you with a question. What can you cut out to create space for something new?